Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Coming over here, chilling with you again, in the yard. Beautiful day outside. You know, it's just sort of an incentive to do these things because it's so nice out. Alright, so we're going to do two things right now. Go on two magical adventures. One, we're going to talk about Lil B, a subject that I know is near and dear to all of your hearts. And two, I've been watching these videos. I'm trying to hone my abilities of talking off the dome without, script or anything like that. And I tend to notice that when I go off the dome like that, I start to use all these conversational crutches which really throw the pace of me talking off or distract from what I'm trying to say, really break up my point, dilute the message I'm trying to deliver. And I'm using phrases like, and constantly going, in between every other sentence. So in this video, I'm going to, as hard as I can, just prevent myself from doing that. So you're going to be watching me be conscious of this. All right, let's talk about Lil B here. I have a theory dealing with Mr. B, Mr. Lil B. I think Lil B is hip-hop music's first true outsider artist. If you go up Googling on the interwebs, you will find that there is such a thing as outsider music. There is a bit of debate on when this term was coined, but generally it does mean musicians who are not part of the commercial music industry and write music that ignores standard musical and lyrical conventions, whether it be due to no formal training or disagreement with the musical conventions that much music out there embraces. Now, this is different than experimental music. This is different than avant-garde music. You will find that if you dive into genres of music like that, that a lot of the artists, not all of the artists, but a lot of the artists playing these styles of music do have formal training, and it is through that formal training and years of conforming to traditional music standards that drives them insane, and then they go wandering down the experimental music aisle. But instead, what we're talking about here is an outsider artist who may or may not have formal training, but just sort of wanders far outside of the norm to the point where their music may seem ridiculous or absurd. I'm going to give you some examples. Bands like The Shags, look them up, or Daniel Johnston. And just because these artists aren't necessarily commercial in the traditional sense doesn't mean they haven't sold records. You know, a lot of these artists have sold records and have sold records to people who they ended up influencing greatly, who do have a bit more in the way of commercial appeal. So, The Shags, Daniel Johnston, Wesley Willis, of course, look up Wesley Willis. Dude's music is insane. R. Stevie Moore, who is a huge influence on Ariel Pink. Jandek, Moondog, Tiny Tim, William Hung, in a sense. You know, I never really considered him an outsider artist per se, but he does seem to fit the bill in a lot of ways because there is this outsider artist from the 60s, this warbling, singing housewife. I think her name is Mrs. Miller or something. She's kind of like the original William Hung, if you will. I heard about a record of hers in this video. The frontman of Dead Kennedys, Jello Biafra, was talking about this novelty album he had of her. She had these pot brownies on the front. It's totally ridiculous. And there's this awful recording of her singing Yellow Submarine on YouTube that I think you should check out. I'll link down there in the description. And a personal favorite of mine for outsider artists is Tonetta. Just search him up on YouTube if you don't know him. I have these 3 records of his, volume 1, 2, and 3, of all these great songs dealing with sex, divorce, hatred, so on and so forth. He talks in a slew of different topics. He's just an entertainer all around, and a dancer, and a looker. And, you know, the things about a lot of these artists that make them outsider to me is their lyrics dive into some strange topics. They have alternative messages. Maybe their recordings are kind of lo-fi or cobbled together on a very low budget. They typically don't stick to regular song structures, or there's something just very strange and idiosyncratic about their style. And they're also incredibly just very non-commercially appealing, whether that be intentional or not. Whether that just be a part of their natural style or whether they're really trying to, but I think part of the true outsider is that, you know, they're really not trying that hard to be weird. They're just naturally weird. And I think Lil B fits that bill. You know, when it comes to hip-hop, Lil B is as unconventional as it gets when it comes to the traditions of hip-hop. If he wasn't so unconventional, if he wasn't so breaking the rules, and believe me, you know, when it comes to the rules of, I suppose, being, I do want to say talented. People have a specific sound in their head when it comes to a talented rapper. They have a specific idea in their head. This is what talented means when you're a rapper. And Lil B very much goes against that grain, but still makes music that people are interested in. His very large and very passionate cult following. And I say cult following because not that the following is small, but the following seems to exist without any sort of embrace or force coming down from the mainstream. It's a very natural, organic, grassroots sort of thing. So that to me makes it a cult following as large as it is. And I think Lil B's following is so huge that he may be, correct me on this if I'm wrong, tell me your opinions, I think he may be the biggest outsider artist of all time. In terms of not just popularity, but long-running popularity. Just ongoing popularity. So I think he's one of the most popular outsider artists of all time. I think he is hip-hop's first true outsider artist. If you have an opinion on that, let me know. I know there are weird rappers out there. I know there are experimental rappers out there. I know there are abstract rappers out there. But to me, Lil B just breaks so many rules in that some of his songs are really weird and just kind of unlistenably strange. He just doesn't seem to give a fuck about whether or not some of his songs are appealing. Of course, there are tracks out there that he has, like other outsider artists too. There are tracks that he has that do seem to be a little bit more conventional. And it is tracks like this that his fans will gravitate toward and say, oh, look, he is talented, actually. Listen to this song where he's actually saying something meaningful or his flow is actually kind of on point. But I think that's maybe the wrong way to go about it because, and I mean go about supporting Lil B, that is, or just saying he's a great artist or saying he's a unique artist. Because if all of his songs fit so closely to our preconception of what a talented hip-hop artist is, there wouldn't be anything special about him. I think the fact that he is off the beaten path when it comes to technical ability, he is off the beaten path when it comes to his delivery, is what makes him so interesting in the first place. I think that's something to be embraced, not necessarily ignored or to try to divert people's attention away from. I was just listening to 05 Fuck 'Em a little bit last night, and there's some ridiculous songs on that tape, and for better or worse, they're there, and I think the fact that they're there only adds to this characteristic that Lil B has as an outsider artist. And I think one more thing I want to mention before I head out is like other outsider artists, this doesn't apply to all of them, but Lil B is just amazingly prolific. There's just so much about him that doesn't fit into the mainstream. The video may cut off now, or may have already cut off, I'm not sure, but I'm going to keep going and talking. There are just so many things about him that don't apply to the mainstream way, the commercial way of doing things if you are a hip-hop artist. And yet, despite that, I think a lot of his music has done so much to influence and impact artists who actually are commercial and are mainstream. I mean, A$AP Rocky is probably the most obvious example, but overall, I think what Lil B's songs, especially his 2009-2010 output, like Wonton Soup and so on and so forth, I think what songs like that have done is sort of ushered in a new era or a new acceptance with this younger generation with just absurdity, just ridiculousness in hip-hop. Why take yourself so seriously when it's so fun to just kind of let go and not give a fuck? So there you go. Let me know what you think. Tell me if there's an artist that you think beat Lil B to the punch, or if you think there's an artist who is maybe as popular as Lil B, but is even more outside.